Davises are here, but the broader, kind of a quick but comprehensive update on biosolids. Let's recap. I think, the Davises were probably the first folks to come to us last spring over the applications by the city of the city of Depot Bay, city of Depot Bay, on property very close to the Sletz River. And they were followed by, I would say at least a couple of dozen other people with concerns about this program. I think the county really tried to respond, and especially I want to give a nod to Public Information Officer Casey Miller and County Counsel Wayne Belmont, who have invested a lot of time in this. We convened the Biosolids Summit in Lincoln City last year. We got our legislators there. We got agency people there and had a very robust discussion. We've created the information page. We requested both the cities and Innet Crest to impose a moratorium on applications along the Sletz. Last December, during the public hearing on renewal of the permits for sites across or adjacent to or close to the Sletz River, we asked DEQ for a moratorium until there could be further study of the issue. At our direction, Mr. Belmont wrote a bill that would give the county more regulatory oversight of biosolids applications near waterways or drinking water sources. And it has been a real struggle to get a hearing for that bill. I know I've been in touch with both Senator Roblin's staff and the staff of Senator Denbrough, who chairs the Natural Resources Committee, and so is Mr. Belmont. And do you have an update on the status of getting a hearing for that bill?
Yeah. The legislature, of course, is in close to the last. They had talked about constitutionally they have to be done by June 30th. They had a target date for sine die, which is when the legislature completes their work, of June 21st. And the latest I'm hearing is they may be done before that. And so what we've been trying to do is to get a hearing before the Natural Resources Committee, which Senator Denbrough does chair. They're still working on trying to do that. I guess I'm a little bit, I'm not sure we're going to get a hearing this session, but I do have a commitment that if we don't do it, we will have opportunities during legislative days in September to actually make some presentations to key legislators on the bill. I'm not sure that I'm going to see the bill move any farther where it sits in the process right now this year. It's likely not to move anywhere else. But we've started that conversation. There's a lot of senators and legislators who now understand that there's concerns with the process that's in place, with the activities that DEQ undertakes, both in terms of the resources they have and the enforcement capabilities that they have, but as well as the question of is it time to re-examine all the regulatory environment around biosolids and look at things differently. So with that word's getting out there, and I think we're making some headway in terms of getting people educated. There is a pretty concerted effort by those in other areas to, the bill had a lot of opposition, a lot of organized opposition, which is why
League of Oregon Cities,
the Oregon Farm Bureau,
Bureau,
various of the groups that you would expect, but that's the legislative process, and oftentimes it moves at a glacial pace in terms of doing it, but at least getting the word out there that there's concerns with this is an excellent start, and I think we're moving forward with that. So we'll see where that goes. I can say locally that while nobody observed a specific moratorium, there were changes. And I give credit to Save Our Sletz, to the Davises and others for keeping this on the forefront. And communities did recognize it, and I think they're all having conversations about the manner in which they're treating biosolids, and some changes were made. Specifically, Depot Bay is doing something differently. The city of Newport is no longer applying in the Sletz area. And others are looking at alternatives. One of the things that I just had a recent discussion with the city manager in Toledo is that the city mayor in Toledo is actually taking it on as sort of a personal project, wants to look at doing an effort that includes a cogeneration facility another manner in which they would actually collect biosolids from not just, I guess we could say a region, it wouldn't be just Lincoln County, but from other areas. They actually are talking about locating that facility and property in Toledo in order to deal with some of the waste here as an alternative to doing a land application process. That has about a $16 million price tag. It's not an easy thing to fund. But they're at least moving forward to explore that. In the meantime, they, of course, are moving forward with their land application because in their minds, they don't have any other alternative to do that. But they're still looking at things. We have also received and engaged in, as we had discussed, one of the things we want to do is look at some baseline testing. We want to know what's going on out there. We did receive a drinking water grant and supplemented with county funds. We're actually completing, I think, the first 30 or 40 tests will be completed by the end of this month, and then going to do some additional tests on private wells. We're out there testing to see what's the impact in areas that include properties adjacent to where biosolids are applied, and then in other areas. I think actually that's opened our eyes a little bit to saying that we need to do some examination of well water quality that in some of the same manner that we do with municipal systems. So we continue that process, and we want to pivot to have further discussions with DEQ, another segment of DEQ, the Oregon Health Authority, and others on doing additional testing in the Siletz watershed, not just that watershed, but all watersheds. So there are some efforts underway to continue that, to get some baseline information, to see what's really going out there, what is impacting the water quality of our watersheds in Western Oregon. So that's some of the efforts that are underway.
Okay. And we will hear from the Davises in public comment, but one thing they have requested that we have not taken up yet, and others supported this as well, was us adopting some kind of local ordinance to either regulate or outright prohibit land application of biosolids. And I know in the past you have given us legal guidance that that is something that is not allowed to us, that we're preempted by state authority, correct? Well, let me flip the argument on its head that people might raise. 2 years ago, the voters of Lincoln County passed a ban on aerial spraying, and it went in, and right after that ordinance became effective, two private property owners challenged it in court. And we're now in year 3 of that ban, waiting for a ruling from the circuit court. And in the meantime, everybody involved, even if it hasn't passed legal muster, are treating it as if it's in effect. And what if, for nothing else, we did such a measure and it kind of ratcheted up the issue another level, put pressure on the cities that have not found alternatives to look at landfilling, incineration, or other alternatives in the short term?
Again, I think we've had this conversation a lot. Remember, we're in litigation right now over that aerial spraying bill. My position is that significant portions of that bill are preempted by state law, and that once the court finally rules, I'm sure it'll be appealed. All the parties are going to do it. I haven't changed my legal position there. And I would not recommend to you that you go forward with something that based on our analysis of what the legal process is, that doesn't have a chance of standing it up. What you'd be doing is committing county resources to basically to defend something that's indefensible. And so I wouldn't recommend doing that. That was done by an initiative process. Mm-hmm. You may recall that our recommendation was not to go that route to address the aerial spraying issue. And so I couldn't recommend that you go forward with any kind of a measure that, at least in my legal opinion, would not withstand legal scrutiny. That's number one. Number two is you got a lot more forces aligned against this. I have no doubt that if we pass the local ordinance here, that you're going to have a number of groups that go forward and challenge it legally, including the cities. And through their associations, it's going to be a challenge. I just don't think that's a productive way to address the problem. I think that what the routes that we've taken in this particular circumstance are the way to address it. This is a discussion that goes on in a lot of communities around the country, and I could give you a number of examples on the other side of, let's say, the political spectrum of efforts in this kind of area. The groups in the eastern part of the state that would like to pass local initiatives and local ordinances that say we disregard the rules around protection of wolves, state and federal laws. This is happening. I mean, this happens a lot. So if you want to take that kind of approach, I think you're going to need to understand the consequences of doing something like that. We have a system in place. There are, and I know preemption, and let me back it up a little bit by saying that we constantly fight the battle with the legislature, with the federal government, with others to try and lift any kind of preemptions that we think, especially those things that we think we want to have more stringent or bigger requirements to address things like environmental issues. We constantly fight that battle, but you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. So I would actually not recommend you go that direction. I didn't recommend it. I recommended against it when the initiative came out on the aerial spraying. I think that doesn't lead to a solution.
Any thoughts on that from my fellow commissioners?
Well, I think Council Belmont has given us sound advice. When I was a new commissioner, I was told, listen to your attorney. And I think that for our Board of Commissioners to try to take a legal action that from the advice of our attorney is clearly something that will not be productive. I've said many times that our staff already is exhausted, and we continue to pile initiatives and time requirements on them. So to ask our staff to take additional time when they don't have the time to initiate a process that frankly we, at least based on our legal advice, pretty clearly believe is going to be not productive, and to frankly waste taxpayer dollars in that effort, something I can't support.
I'm very similar with Doug. I mean, while I absolutely do want to see a solution to this, absolutely, I feel like I just don't want to spend taxpayer money on something we know is going to get litigated. I just don't kind of want to spend the resources that way. I feel like the resources might be better spent doing existing or continued testing or looking at other non-point source types of pollution we have going on in that system. I just feel like if we were going to sink those kinds of resources into that issue, I'd rather direct it directly at the problem rather than through a legal process.
Perhaps we could work with the city of Toledo, at least. Yes, $16 million is a big price tag, but perhaps we could help access funding for at least feasibility and design studies to try and get it off the ground. And if it proved to be commercially viable, perhaps a private investor would want to come in on it.
That's the type of place I'd like to sink resources into instead of into legal stuff.
Okay.
Wouldn't that also likely, though, fall under the COG, Council of Governments? I believe, Commissioner Hall, you're on the Board of Directors, and certainly I would encourage the City of Toledo to work with the COG and other cities, and then certainly the county be involved in an effort if that gains some traction.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the last thing I'd say is that, and I lost my train of thought. Anyhow, go ahead. I'll
Sorry,
I'll
Doug.
try to refresh my brain.
Yeah, I was just going to say, thinking about the city of Toledo and what they want to do, to me, that's a good way to invest our time and resources, even if we're just kind of helping that, because while the sluts is certainly important to me personally, living in this community, this is an issue that's taking place in all other different river systems besides ours, and that's a type of regional solution that could have some real impact environmentally, rather than just kind of going after the few cities we have here. Creating a regional solution would do a lot for that issue.
And my computer recycled here. And I think that's where our efforts at the state level and the legislature are really the best opportunity. If we're going to devote time and resources, that's the place to do it.
All right, we'll open things up for constituent input now. And Casey?